So, so some tips about beginning to explore this beer world. I was also going to ask you, and we're touching on that with cheese now.
Yeah.
How do I pair food and beer? Your two biggest best beginner tips for.
Okay. Well, the two biggest tips are, one, match the intensity of the food with the intensity of the beer.
Mm-hmm.
So don't pick a huge, big flavored beer with a delicate piece of fish that you're going to overwhelm completely. Balance these two things out. Secondly, look for the part of the beer's flavor that's going to link to the flavor of the food. For example, if you have a steak and it's been char grilled and you have on the surface that flavor from the fire, the caramelization, you might look for a beer which also has caramelized flavors. In our case, you would say Brooklyn Brown Ale or Brooklyn Lager have caramelized flavors that are developed in the process of making the grains that are going to come through into the beer, and that links to the flavor in the food. I call that a flavor hook. It's a thing that grabs onto the food.
Yeah.
And if you have those two things working together, you're 95% of the way there.
Actually, that's such good tips. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So intensity and the hook.
Yeah. And then really the final thing is try to avoid clashes. There are some things that simply the flavors just don't go together correctly. Like some cheeses that are so powerful that they almost make your tongue numb, like Roquefort. Very difficult for pairing. So there are some things like that. But by and large, pairing beer with food is relatively easier than pairing wine. If you read about wine, you see this long list of things that don't go with wine or give wine problems. We don't have those problems.
Yeah, you can,
because we have a wide range of flavor to work with.
Awesome. So, lastly, you're making craft beer.
Yes.
You're a beer brewer, and I wanted to talk about the craft, the actual making of beer. And you're saying you make more than 15 types of beer, create 15 types of beer per year. How do you find the inspiration? What are your influences? For example, I heard about one of your newest products, the Sorachi hop beer.
And that was actually literally inspired by the aroma and of that hop variety. Originally grown in Japan, now grown only on one farm in Oregon, and it smells like lemongrass and lemon verbena. To me, it smelled like a summer day.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to make a beer which expressed that hop. And normally we blend hops. They're basically a spice, and they give you different flavors and aromas. This one was quite unique, and I said, okay, I want something very dry and that just really pops and expresses that hop. And really, it was that. But we made a beer last year, which was basically a copy, if you like, of the cocktail called the Manhattan, which is rye whiskey and sweet vermouth and bitters. And we basically made a rye beer, aged it in a rye whiskey barrel, and then infused it with all the various botanicals that go into vermouth and bitters, and literally made the beer taste just like a Manhattan. We did a beer which was called Cuvée de Cardoz, which was 12 different spices from the top Indian chef in the United States named Floyd Cardoz. Now he's from Goa, which was colonized by the Portuguese, so you have a guy who's completely Indian, but his name is Floyd Cardoz, and he is cooking in New York and doing Indian food. And they toasted the spices in hot pans at the restaurant, ground them, vacuum packed them, and we put them into the beer the next day. So everything from chilies to black pepper, ginger, fenugreek, cardamom, and all of these very light but very delicately blended together into the beer. It was a really big hit.
Yeah.
So I'm inspired by different types of ingredients, different types of food, but even other areas of food making. We have some beers that are aged in bourbon barrels, and you have the flavor coming out of the wood.
Yeah, it sounds just like the artist's way, the creative process. You just need to have as big a palette as possible and just pick from. It sounds like really you probably right now you have thoughts of what your next beer is going to be.
Yeah, well, in a way, I think it's like writing music. Like right now, we're working on this project in Italy where there's a famous cinematographer. He's famous for poetry as well and visual art, named Tonino Guerra. And Tonino is famous as the cinematographer and art director for Fellini's great movies and Antonioni's great movies. and he's very well known in a lot of parts in the world. And we're basically, I spent a day talking to him and everything else. He's telling stories about growing up, and he did the label. But then we decided, like, I'm going to translate his life into a beer. So the flavors that he grew up with, the colors that he grew up with, all these things into a beer.
Yeah.
So in a way, it can be like writing music. So the thing that I would say is that the brewer, the modern brewer, is much more like a chef than they are like a winemaker. The idea is in your head first, and then out of the idea that you have, you try to create something beautiful. And that's very much more like cooking or writing music than it is like pressing grapes.
Yeah. I want to thank you immensely for this short time. I've been taking some ideas that I'll sure be using in my business, creating great snacks for the chef dimension there. And I want to thank the viewers. I want to thank Grand Hotel. We actually ran overtime, so we have to get moving from here. And I'll see you soon on Bar Deli TV. Bye.
See ya.